Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for joining this session. I don't need any fresh introduction to anybody since we are all part of ASLI, either now or in the past, or you're an associate. But for the sake of those who, as requested by Dr. Ivan Taylor, who may watch this at another time, so this is the African Space Leadership Institute. It's a think tank that is focused on space for Africa. So it's like the equivalent of the European Space Policy Institute. So it's barely about this is third year or second year, about to enter the third year now. So we work majorly with people who have been volunteering with the organization, and some of them are here. Some have volunteered in the past, and then we also have some like associates, so they are friends of the organization, so to say. We are trying to establish the organization more or less, and trying to look at the like 10 years from now, what will this organization look like? So in January, I did a presentation to the team, giving an idea of the whole scope of the organization. I was thinking whether I should do it now, but because of time, maybe some other time I'll look for opportunity to talk about the organization, the entire scope of what we are looking at. But I just want us to start with one aspect, which is the values which we want to incorporate within the organization, but also if we do our job very well, we also want to translate that into our professional ecosystem. So the values, the acronym is ART, ASLI. ART, like when you write your email, there's that eoofyoung@gmail.com. So that ART is actually AT. So AT stands for accountability and transparency. And we want to inculcate that within the organization, but we also want to inculcate that within the professional ecosystem. And some of our programs are already doing that. So one of the programs we do is called View from the Sides. And in that program, we invite people, leaders who have represented Africa in any international meeting, whether it's COPUS, whether it's WLC, any of these space-related meetings, and we invite them to come and speak about what ensued in that meeting, what was Africa's contribution, what was the outcome of the meeting, how does it impact on Africa, what should Africa be doing? So that's View from the Side, but it's just one of the aspects of accountability and then transparency. And then there is the A there, which stands for agility. And the hope is that we should build an agile organization. And the session we're going to have next month is by Dr. Valanathan Munsami, who some of you already know, and he's going to be speaking on building an agile organization. And then there is S there, which stands for systems thinking, which is actually why we are here today. And I am hoping that by the time we go through this session, you understand that concept of systems thinking and its different ramifications and different methodologies that are built on systems thinking. And why I've actually like opened it up for some of our associates to participate is so that you can try and begin to apply this even in maybe your current job, your current research, because it's something that I see it's so important, and I think it's very important. It's a very important concept for us to hold and understand, and actually even apply to our lives too, because I'm beginning to think in that direction too. So today we'll be focusing about systems thinking, and by extension, something called systems dynamics, which we also get to understand them shortly. And then there is the L there, which stands for learning. And the idea is that we are hoping that we want to inculcate this habit of learning as an individual, but also as an organization. So, if today you're going to hear about the concept of a learning organization, one of the recommended texts by which Dr. Ivan Taylor will tell us about later is a book written by Peter Senge, which he wrote on learning organization. So LD stands for learning organization, and then I stands for innovation. And that's in May, that's a lady that's going to be coming to speak on something around innovation. So we want to start this series, and then from there we begin to do other things. So within ASLI, the African Space Leadership Institute, there is the ASLI Academy. So it's an in-house institution within the think tank, which is focused on developing the team members on different areas. So there's so many things we're looking at doing, uh, uh, writing, speaking, both public speaking and interpersonal speaking. So many things which are skills that I think we need for a thriving organization. So that's just like a background. So today we are starting with systems thinking, and we have Dr. Ivan Taylor here. So some of you may know I'm doing my PhD. I got to know about, I joined a group called System Dynamics Society. I actually can't remember how I came across system dynamics, but somewhere along the line, I joined the professional global body called System Dynamics Society. And then some years ago, they started a mentorship program. And I think that was the very first time they started that mentorship program. So those who are interested in knowing more about the concept or the ideology or the principles were matched with people who have been in the field for much longer time. So I was privileged to be matched with Dr. Ivan Taylor. And after me, many other people have come on board and have become his mentees. And the good thing about him especially is that he has maintained relationships with all his mentees. And like you heard us talking about earlier, he's writing a book, and some of the mentees have actually volunteered to maybe translate into their local languages. Dr. Van Taylor, well, maybe he will talk about a bit about himself, but he's the founder of Policy Dynamics, which is like a consulting firm, and he has consulted for several institutions, including some defense or military institutions in the US. So I don't know what other thing should I say, but maybe I should just hand over to you, Dr. Ivan Taylor. Thank you so much for making out time, because I know this is maybe, I don't know, maybe late morning or early afternoon for you, but thank you so much for making out time for this. And thanks for all you do, both for the system dynamics community, but also other aspects of your areas of interest and your work life generally. So thank you. Over to you now.
Okay, just before I start, I just want to mention a few things. I do have some pretty strong connections with Africa, even though I live in Canada part-time and live in Florida part-time, because as Tim said, there's a pretty active system dynamics group in Africa. There's the South African System Dynamics Society, which is probably welcomes members from any part of Africa. And there's also, I think, a Nigerian system dynamics group. I'm not sure if it's a society or not, maybe a chapter of the System Dynamics Society. And I'm sure they would welcome anyone from Africa. And the System Dynamics Society, they try to accommodate people from Africa by giving them a pretty significant discount on their membership. So basically, the normal membership fee is, I'm not sure what it would be, but it's much cheaper if you're from Africa. They wanna encourage people from Africa to join the society, and it is an international society. And just another plug. Did you, Etienne, say what the A stood for?
Yeah, you mean if A,
The A, you said, S is systems, and A, what was A supposed to stand
Okay,
for?
like agility to from the word
Agility. Okay.
agile, yeah, to build
I
an
have a,
agile organization.
I have another idea of
Okay.
what A could stand for. What about artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence is changing the world right now. And I think that, basically Africa can leapfrog over a lot of the issues that other countries have had by really adopting artificial intelligence. And and for example, there is a conference this summer in Boston, in the United States, and it's in for the Systematic Society, and the theme of the conference is artificial intelligence to support system dynamics. And there's going to be a lot of talks there about how artificial intelligence can be used to support system dynamics. And in fact, I came across a interesting application. I have a subscription to ChatGTP, and they have an application in ChatGTP called the System Dynamics Explorer. And the System Dynamics Explorer can help you build causal loop diagrams like the ones I'm going to show today, and also build system dynamics models that are quantitative. It's not perfect, but it is a very good starting point if you want to get started in developing a model. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. I think those are very good ideas, very good tools, very good things that can really leapfrog your learning in system dynamics. Of course, if you want to get one-on-one mentoring like Etienne did, you can feel free to reach out to me, and I can bring you in as a one-on-one mentee if you want to get help individually. And I would do that. Etienne had to join the society to become a mentee, but I would do that for anyone, whether they're in the society or not. So just reach out to me after the presentation, and we can start setting up meetings. And the one-on-one mentoring you can learn at your own pace. So basically, it's whatever you feel like doing. Okay, let's get started with my presentation. Let's see. Did you let me share my screen?
Yes, you can share your screen here.
Okay, so let's. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So yeah, this as Tim said, I'm Ivan Taylor. I have a PhD in public policy. I live. I'm a Canadian citizen. I live in Ontario, Canada, and I spend my winters in Florida, United States, because Ontario, Canada is quite cold in the winter. And now I'm retired from the Department of National Defense in Canada. I spent 33 years there. I retired in 2012, and I've been retired. And since I retired, I've been focusing completely on my company, Policy Dynamics, which specializes in system dynamics. And I've also recently got involved in COSI. It's the International Council on Systems Engineering, and they're a very good organization as well. They're very interested in system dynamics and systems thinking. They are an engineering organization. They have about 25,000 members around the world, and they have something called a foundation. And that foundation is trying to develop systems engineers in places that have not had them before, and one of the areas is Africa. And so they have the foundation, is organizing with universities in Africa. Right now, I think they have a university in Nigeria, I don't know the name, and a university in Kenya that they're partnering with to try to develop a systems engineering program there. Anyways, I'm a member of INCOSE, and I give a lot of presentations to INCOSE about system dynamics. And I do recommend you visit the INCOSE website. It's INCOSE.org, and it's got a lot of video presentations on systems engineering, and there's some presentations there that I have given on system dynamics. So that's a little background on myself. And the title of this talk is Systems Thinking and its Relevance to Space Leadership. And that title was actually suggested to me by Etem. So I thank him for giving me the idea of calling this presentation Systems Thinking and its Relevance to Space Leadership. So we're going to have a few objectives. The first thing is I want you to understand the core principles of systems thinking as it's used in the field of the system dynamics society. And then we'll just quickly distinguish what a system is from a non-system. And we'll hopefully after this presentation, you'll have learned about causal loop diagrams, which is a special tool in system dynamics and systems thinking, and feedback structures, which are a big part of causal loop diagrams. And then hopefully, we're going to explore how systems thinking can be useful in African space leadership. And I'm going to give an example of that. And then at the end, I'm going to introduce system dynamics, which is another tool. I'm not going to go into it in much detail. It's kind of technical, but if you want to learn more about system dynamics, feel free to contact me. Oh, another thing you might want to do is you might want to look at my Policy Dynamics YouTube channel. It has many, many videos on system dynamics and systems engineering. So every presentation I give, I post on LinkedIn and I upload to my YouTube channel. So hopefully Etem will send me this video and I will upload it to my YouTube channel and also post it on LinkedIn. So I do recommend you look at that if you're interested in system dynamics. There's a couple of training videos there that you might look at. And one of the training videos I did was for the Nigerian system dynamics chapter. And I actually used a Nigerian population example. Okay, so what is a system? A system is a set of interconnected elements organized to achieve a function or purpose. Pretty simple idea, but the key word is interconnected. And an example is a rocket launch system. Pretty simple example. I guess maybe not that simple, but it's an example that's pretty straightforward. Everybody understands what that system involves. Now, what are the characteristics of a system? First, as I said, there's the interconnectedness, and basically a system is made up of elements that are interconnected. However, there's a boundary on the system. So a system has a boundary. So there's part of the system, there's part of the modeling is the internal workings of the system. And then there's the external things in the system. And it's often a very important thing to identify the boundaries of the system because you can't model everything, but you can model a system with boundaries. And of course, it has a purpose or function, like I said. And another thing that is interesting is something called emergent behavior. And emergent behavior in this case is the basic statement that everybody's heard that that the system is greater than the sum of its parts. So basically, by looking at all the parts individually, you may not be able to predict what the system will do. just by looking at the parts. So the system is greater than the sum of its parts, and its behavior may be totally different than what the individual parts behavior is. And the last thing I want to talk about is feedback and delays, which are basically part of the process of building a model. Involves identifying feedback loops and identifying delays in the system. One of the things about systems and their interconnections is that when you make a policy, let's say you make a policy decision, it takes time to implement that policy decision. Things don't react immediately after the policy decision is made. So there's delays in the system. And then there's also feedback in the system. And so, for example, the policy might ripple through the system and come back to influence the policy again. Okay, now linear and complex thinking is something I want you to understand. So linear thinking basically goes A to B to C in a cause and effect way, cause and effect idea. Now, complex thinking goes from A to B back to A, from B to C back to B, from C to A, and again back to C. And basically, one of the ways to think about that is actually that the effect is also a cause. And that is an interesting idea that maybe people don't often think about, is that actually, when C affects A, then A will go around and affect C. So the effect is a cause. Okay, so let's look at cause and effect a little deeper. And this is the parts of the system and how they affect each other. The first idea is effects in the same direction. And an example here is national investment and technological achievement. So the more national investment in space leadership, the more technological achievement. So these things move in the same direction. And basically, the less national investment, the less technological achievement. So they're moving in the same direction, either up or down. The other idea is moving in the opposite direction. So in this case, budgetary strain will lead to national investment going down, and budgetary strain going down can lead to national investment going up. So these things are moving in the opposite direction. So that's the other type of thing that you can have as a connection. And then the last thing is delays. And so, for example, technological achievement will increase. If it increases, technological achievement increases, then international prestige can increase, but might be a delay. So basically, it takes time for technological achievement to lead to international prestige. So there's a same direction connection, but there's a delayed effect. And so we put a delay on the link. Okay, so let's talk about feedback loops. So feedback loops are connections between, or basically you build a feedback loop by connecting a number of things together with these different connections. And there's two types of feedback loops. There's reinforcing loops, which lead to growth and collapse, depending on whether they're vicious cycles or virtuous cycles. And then there's balancing loops, which lead to stability, and they're often considered goal-seeking behavior. Okay, so let's look at this a little closer. So this is two loops. I'm going to label them R1 and R2. And R1 I'm going to call the space race loop, and R2 is going to be the fiscal constraint loop. And basically, if we start with national investment, increasing national investment increases mission experience, space mission experience, which increases technological achievement, which after a delay increases international prestige, which can then increase national investment. So it's a positive or reinforcing loop. However, increasing national investment could lead to budgetary strain. So increasing national investment could increase budgetary strain, and budgetary strain could reduce national investment. So this is now a balancing loop or a negative loop, and basically that is a loop that that you should consider. And one of the things I want to talk about this is that loop, that balancing loop, may be unexpected. You know, you may not have realized that that loop existed when you first thought about it. But so this unanticipated consequence that national investment can lead to budgetary strain may be something that you wouldn't have considered originally when you thought about it. And so that's one of the great things about causal loop diagrams and system dynamics is you can see some unintended consequences. Okay, let's talk about causal loops again in a little more detail. So causal loop diagrams are combinations of reinforcing and balancing loops, and they help us think about systems without data or computers. So, you know, computers are great, and that system dynamics relies on computer simulation, but causal loop diagrams can be just drawn on paper. And in fact, one of the very important tools in building causal loop diagrams is something called participatory system dynamics, which involves getting a group of people together and brainstorming a causal loop diagram on a big whiteboard and trying to come to an agreement on what are the causal relationships in a system. And that's a very good tool for getting consensus among a bunch of stakeholders. Okay, let's look at a more detailed causal loop diagram. So here is a more detailed causal loop diagram. And you can see that we still have R1, the space race loop. So we see that national investment leads to mission experience, which leads to technological achievement, which leads to international prestige. I also have something called a perceived rival threat in this scenario, and so that leads to a space race. And then you have national investment, and then you have the budgetary strain or the fiscal constraint in B1 that international national investment can lead to budgetary strain. And then we have a new loop here called R2, which is a reinforcing loop. And that loop I'm going to call the innovation and learning loop. So mission experience leads to increased knowledge, which leads to increased training effectiveness, which leads to increased mission success, which leads to increased organizational momentum, which leads to increased mission experience. So there's another reinforcing loop. And then we have another reinforcing loop, R3, which I'm going to call the stakeholder engagement loop. And so organizational momentum leads to stakeholder participation, which leads to stakeholder alignment, which leads to mission success. However, there's a balancing loop that may be unexpected, and that is that organizational momentum leads to stakeholder participation, but stakeholder participation leads to coordination complexity. And coordination complexity can lead to a lower mission success rate. And lower mission success rate leads to a lower organizational momentum, leads to a lower stakeholder participation. So then we have a balancing loop B2, and I'm going to call that the participation friction loop. So it's nice to name these loops and see what they mean. Okay, so this one of the great things about this model is that it's completely about leadership, and it's completely about people and as in the system. Another important thing to recognize in this model is that it's a closed system. So basically, there's no external things that are coming in to the system that will that in this, at least in this model, that will say disrupt the model. So basically anything that happens in this model is self-contained. Okay, so let's look at something that Etam and I looked at when we were working together in in a mentoring program, and that was the space debris problem called Kessler's syndrome. And the problem is that the accumulation of debris in low Earth orbit leads to some feedback loops. And the feedback loop is that we can have collisions, and the collisions lead to more debris, and more debris leads to higher collision risk. And then we want to have a way to handle that. So tracking of debris can lead to safer navigation, which can lead to fewer collisions. So this is called the Kessler syndrome. So here's the CLD, the causal loop diagram for space debris. So we have a reinforcing loop, R4, which is the space debris and failure dynamics loop. So we see that increasing mission success will also will or decreasing no increasing mission success will lead to more missions, which lead to more possible failure events, which will lead to more debris creation, which will lead to more debris accumulation, which will lead to more collision risk, which will lead to more mission success or lower mission success rate. Now that's a reinforcing loop, and that's the Kessler syndrome. And then there's a balancing loop, which I call the resilience through oversight loop. And so increasing failure events will lead to organizational awareness. Organizational awareness can lead to preventive oversight, and then preventive oversight can lead to lower numbers of failure events. So that's an oversight um, loop, a balancing loop. And then we have another balancing loop, which is a little more complicated. And that's called the governance-based mitigation loop. So more debris accumulation can lead to more pressure for regulations, which can lead to more debris mitigation measures, which will lead to a lower collision risk, which will lead to a lower collision risk will lead to a higher success rate. A higher success rate will lead to lower failure events, and lower failure events will lead to uh, lower debris creation, and lower debris creation will lead to lower debris accumulation. So that's a balancing loop. I call that the governance-based mitigation loop. Okay, so here's some applications of system dynamics that we can think about. So we can use, systems thinking. So we can use it in strategic planning. I hope that I showed you how to do that in the first causal loop diagram. And then we can use it for policy formulation. And we can use it for stakeholder analysis and stakeholder engagement. And we can use it for technological development pathways. So those are just some of the ways you can use systems thinking and causal loop diagrams. I'm sure there's many, many more ways you can think of to use this technology. Okay, so let's now look at the whole picture of all these loops. So as I said, we have R1, the reinforcing space race loop. We have B1, the fiscal constraint loop. We have R2, the innovation and learning loop. We have R3, the engagement loop. We have B2, the participation friction loop. We have R4, the debris and failure dynamics loop. We have B3, the resilience through oversight loop. And we have B4, the governance-based mitigation loop. So when you put it all together, it looks like this. So this may be a little hard to read, but it's all the loops put together. And so if we start up here with national investment and budgetary strain, then that leads to mission experience, which leads to learning and innovation here, and increasing mission success, which leads to improved stakeholder engagement here, which leads to a complexity problem and possibly stakeholder friction or participatory friction. And then mission success leads to, failure events, and failure events lead to debris and accumulation and collision risk. And this is a reinforcing loop for this Kessler syndrome. We have a possibility of a balancing loop that can reduce failure events here based on oversight. And then we have another balancing loop here that can reduce collision risk, which is basically a governance-based mitigation loop. So this is the whole system now all put together, and I think it's a very good system, a very good model of the system, and it involves both quantitative and qualitative ideas, which is always good. And I love the fact that mission success is right in the middle of this causal loop diagram. And that's, I think, what we want the goal to be is mission success. I think that that's the most important thing. And all these things hopefully will lead to increased mission success. Okay, so now the last thing I want to talk about is system dynamics. So system dynamics is a method of modeling the system behavior over time. And it's mostly quantitative. So it's a computer simulation, and you have to program it with numbers and equations. So it's quantitative, but it builds on the qualitative tools like CLDs. So a common practice in system dynamics is to start with a problem statement and then look at the system behavior over time and then build a causal loop diagram to try to explain that behavior over time. And then from there, build a stock and a system dynamics model, which is a stock and flow model. I'll get into that next, which is a quantitative model to basically instantiate the causal loop diagram. And then with the system dynamics model, you can start to look for leverage points, which are ways to change the system to get a positive effect. And leverage points involve getting a big effect from a small change and a big, hopefully a big positive effect from a small change. Okay, so I just led to the stocks and flows idea. So there's two basic things in system dynamics. There's stocks, which are basically the state of the system at any point in time. So for example, stocks include knowledge is a stock, although it's a qualitative stock, and debris is also a stock, which is a quantitative stock. And then there's flows, and the flows in this case would be experience, which influences knowledge, and collisions, which influences debris. So those are the stocks and flows, example stocks and flows. And what system dynamics tries to do is look at how the system changes over time through accumulation. And basically the accumulation is in the stocks. And as I said, the stocks are representing the state of the system at any point in time. And so the system is changing over time, and the stock values represent what the system change or what the system is at any point in time, and the flows represent the change of those stocks over time. So that's how the system works, is through stocks and flows. Okay, so a couple last things. So going from insight to action. Sorry about that. Um, we want to use systems thinking to understand complexity. And then also, as I said, we can use it to anticipate unintended consequences. And last, another great thing is about getting better communication between stakeholders. So having multiple stakeholders understanding the system from their perspective, and understanding how they fit into the overall system. And so I just like to have a call for action that I would like you to think about applying CLDs in strategic problem framing. And and then, like I said, if you want any help with that, you can contact me. Anyways, so recommended readings. I think Etienne gave you Systems Thinking in Systems by Danilo Meadows, which is a very good book. It covers both causal loop diagrams and system dynamics models. The Fifth Discipline is also a good book, and Etienne mentioned that this is about the learning organization. And one of the great things in Peter Senge's book is something called archetypes. I didn't get into the archetypes in this presentation, but I have a presentation on my YouTube channel on archetypes. And archetypes are common patterns of causal loop diagrams. Basically, they're causal loop diagrams that appear over and over and over again in organizations. And generally, they involve a balancing loop and a reinforcing loop, or a combination of balancing and reinforcing loops, where you have both an intended consequence and an unintended consequence. And so I think that's a great tool for looking at systems and seeing, for example, why, when you invest all this money, you're not getting the changes you expect. So that's an unintended consequence. You would think that, by investment you would get the changes, but there may be things, as I said, like budgetary or fiscal constraints that stop you from achieving the goals you want. The last, and this is another book on archetypes, which is good. And I worked with Peter Stroh in the project I did with the U.S. Army, and he's written a very good book called Systems Thinking for Social Change. There's also some resources on the web which you can look at. Of course, there's the System Dynamics Society, but there's also a great archive of magazine magazines called the Systems Thinker, which have many, many good articles. So if you go to look up the Systems Thinker, I think it might be .org, you'll get the website and you can download all the articles there from that magazine, which ran over a number of years. I don't think it's going anymore, but there is still a great database of articles about systems thinking in that magazine. And the last one is the Water Center. The Water Center is a place that is encouraging systems thinking in a big way, and one of my mentees is a big part of the Water Center. Okay, so my final thought is that the ability to see the whole is more valuable than mastery of the parts. And this is basically, as I said, the system is greater than the sum of its parts. But it's just another way of thinking about it, that, mastery of the parts may not tell you what the system as a whole will do. And I think that that's an important aspect of thinking that you can apply in your daily life. Thank you for your attention. And I'm open for questions and comments. And there's my email address if you want to contact me. You can also look me up on LinkedIn, Ivan Taylor, um, and then you can also look at my YouTube channel called Policy Dynamics. And also, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll see that I post all my videos there, and you can actually click on my LinkedIn page and get to my YouTube channel and then watch the videos. Okay, so that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, so thank you, Dr. Taylor. Well, I don't know. I'm just wondering whether my colleagues will really appreciate. um, this idea, but I know maybe with time they become to appreciate it, what systems thinking is about, and in particular what system dynamics is about. So of late, I've been a student of Roger Martin. I think Roger Martin is one of the topmost strategy experts. I think in 2017 he was regarded as the topmost person when it comes to strategy. And he was the former dean of, trying to remember the name of the university in Canada. He used to run their MBA program. And I was surprised. He's a consultant to Procter and Gamble, many of these big companies. And I was surprised that he was referring to system dynamics in his talks. And so it was kind of wow. So there are people that talk about system dynamics. One of the places that I also find very interesting is RAND Corporation, which is one of the institutions I kind of understudied when when the idea about ASLI came up. And only to find out that even at RAND Corporation is as old as, RAND Corporation, for those who don't know, we said the first satellite was launched October 4, 1957. 1948, RAND Corporation had written a proposal to the US government that the US should launch a satellite into space. Uh, but so I'm not going to talk about the politics that came up around that time. But one of the tools they used was system dynamics. Of course, they called it system analysis. That's how they called it. And then now they have a master's and PhD program. They've changed the name from systems analysis. They now call it policy analysis. But everything just boils down to systems thinking, system dynamics. So
I think Nellie had her hand up. I don't know.
yes, Nelly, I saw you. I was just about to call her. Nelly?
Yes, thank you so much, A-team. Thank you so much, Ivan, for that very, very interesting talk. This is my first time learning about systems dynamics, and I've learned a lot. But I just have a question with regards to my current research. I'm doing my PhD in politics at the University of Manchester, and the theoretical framework I'm using um lays a lot of emphasis on path dependence, and so I'm very familiar with feedback loops and reinforcing sequencing when government and institutions make decisions. But I think what I'm very confused about, like you have talked about, building a CLD, you need stakeholders you've emphasized like the collective, working through and observing the behavior, then drafting the CLD. But as an individual researcher, I may not really have that opportunity to work like with a group of other people since it's my personal research. So how do I attain that objectivity to say I've observed the behavior properly in order to maybe draft my own CLD?
Yeah, well, I also develop system dynamics models and causal loop diagrams on my own. I've actually never done a participatory group model building exercise. Some of my mentees have, and I think that I think that you can do a lot of very good work on your own, and I think you should again maybe follow the process that's identified by the System Dynamics Society, which says you should first define the problem and say, what is the problem you're looking at? And generally, the problem involves something that's different from expectations. So, what is going on in the system that you either didn't expect in a mostly often you didn't expect it's a negative thing that's going on in the organization. So so basically what you're supposed to do is look at the behavior over time of the system and see where the system is moving over time. And so one of the things I explain, the way I explain system dynamics is that system dynamics tells you where you are today, how you got there, and where you're headed if nothing changes. And so if the problem is defined as you're heading in a bad way or in a bad place, you're heading in the wrong direction, systems thinking and systems dynamics can help you move in the right direction or change your direction to move in the right direction. So you often talk about like a scenario that is your feared scenario and your hoped for scenario. So now you have basically two possible scenarios, and maybe the feared scenario is the business as usual scenario, and the hoped for scenario is what you want to get to through policy decisions and policy making. And so then what you try to do is you start with the behavior that you are looking at that's maybe moving in the wrong direction. And you can start with that behavior and try to build out a causal loop diagram to explain that behavior. And as I said, maybe with the help of the System Dynamics Explorer in ChatGTP. I don't know if you're allowed to use ChatGTP in your PhD, but it's a very good tool. And so, if you want to use that, you can. If you want to, if you want to build it without assistance of artificial intelligence, then um, definitely I can help you if you want, or or you can just search the literature for similar papers on policy analysis using system dynamics or systems thinking in that area of policy. So definitely, the literature should be reviewed.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, 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 very helpful. Thank you. Thank you so much. And yes, we can use AI ethically. So yes, maybe I'll check that out. I didn't know ChatGPT had that. I'll definitely look at that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, one of the things though is you can't trust it,
Yeah.
so you have to be wise.
Mm.
And so, so for example, it makes a lot of mistakes. It confuses reinforcing and balancing loops. And so you check it over very carefully. And if it makes a mistake, tell it made a mistake,
Yeah.
because hopefully it'll learn that this is a mistake and do better in the future. But
Okay.
so it will try to correct its mistakes, but uh, it does make a lot of mistakes, because right now it's still in the learning steps of system thinking and system dynamics. It hasn't perfected the idea in its database yet.
Okay. I'll definitely keep that in mind. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other question or comment? I actually have a copy of the book that the Thinking in Systems. I don't know the light made up with it. And it's a very good book, Thinking in Systems by Donella Miados. It really, I mean, in a very simple language about systems, uh, systems thinking, its applications, and things like that. So if you can get this book, that'll be fine. For those who are in Asley, they should get a copy of this book as we discussed earlier. Sorry, Ivan, I think you've done something on cybersecurity before. I think you've done a model on cybersecurity.
I've done a few models on cybersecurity, and
Okay,
I have I did one system dynamics model, and then I did a series of archetypes on cybersecurity, and I have videos on my YouTube channel for both of those models. So so yeah, I'm not an expert in cybersecurity, and so I worked with an expert in cybersecurity, and together we built those models. I should say most of the work was his. and I just added a few features to it. But yeah, so that work was done by Keith Willett, who is, I think he used to be a consultant for the Defense Department in the United States. He lives in California, I think, and he was the co-chairman of the Security Working Group in Nkosi, and he did his PhD on system dynamics and systems thinking for cybersecurity. So we were I used parts of his PhD, and he and I together worked on papers to adapt his work and his PhD to cybersecurity problems.
Okay, so Faith is working on something around cybersecurity. I was thinking maybe you want to show something, but since it's on your YouTube channel, maybe instead of showing it here, I was thinking of just showing an example of the application in cybersecurity, but maybe she can just check up your YouTube channel to see that.
Yeah, and if she has if she can't find it, she can email me, and I can send her the link.
You've also done something around legal stuff. I know you've done something on corruption. You've
Yeah.
applied this concept in corruption. Have you done something around something legal?
Um, I know of a paper that was written by someone else. I did a peer review of it, and it was on applications of system dynamics to legal issues. It was system dynamics, not causal loop diagrams. But it was a pretty good paper, and I could probably find it for you if anyone wants to contact me, and I can share it. It's actually on the web. You can actually, I think, download it from the web from the. I think it was done at the Naval Postgraduate School, and it was it was actually, I think, part of something called Systems Engineering Law Working Group in Nkosi. And like I said, there's 50 or so working groups in Nkosi, and so there's working groups for almost anything you can imagine in systems engineering. One of them is in law, and this person was a member of that working group, and he did a system dynamics approach to legal problems in various aspects of legal problems in his work at Naval Postgraduate School. In terms of my modeling, the closest thing that I've done to legal is my work on corruption. And again, I think that was very good work. I built a model which was interesting because I used a database that had data on every country in the world. So I built a model that could be used for every country in the world. It's a general model of corruption, and it can be used for any model in the world, any country in the world. So what I did is I set up an interface with my model, and all you have to do is type in the name of the country, and it'll build the model for your country. Uh, there is, I guess, a couple of things you might need to modify. One of them is the idea that corruption is influenced by the government of the day. So you need to have a submodel of the transition from one government to another, and then the model will calibrate, which will take corruption data and different aspects of the system data and calibrate the model to get a match between the model and the data, which then you can use to extrapolate into the future. And I think one of the great things about that model is that it helps you prioritize where you should make changes to reduce corruption. So I have a paper on that is available on an open source journal. I can't remember the name of the journal. It was a MDPI journal. And so it's open source, so you can download it. I can send you the link. It's also on my, another thing is I have a policy dynamics website called www.policydynamics.ca. and that's got links to my videos, and it's got links to my papers that you can download. So if you want to, just look at my own papers, you can find them there. And I think I may have a picture of Etienne and a recommendation from Etienne as a person who I mentored. Anyways, but yeah, so you take a look at my website if you want to see my papers, because um, it's basically an extension of the YouTube channel, but it involves, it also has all my papers that you can download.
All right, so there's quite a lot. There's a lot of resources. There's a lot of opportunities. So system thinking, system economics can be applied in. I'm really
Yeah,
too many.
I say it applies to anything that changes,
Yeah.
and everything changes in the long run. So basically, it can be applied to anything.
So let's explore it and see how we can develop that skill. Like I said, the whole idea is to see how you can begin to apply it in your current endeavor, trying to solve problems. I see. I mean, even it's you're walking on the street, you're listening to the news, rather than just focusing
Yeah,
on an
yeah,
event, isolated event. You can connect different events, and you see that there's a trend, there's a behavior, as it's called in this field. And then if you go below that, there is a structure that is leading to that behavior. So
that's
once you
that's
understand all that, yeah.
that's important. That's very important, because in system dynamics, we believe that structure determines behavior. So basically, the system is intended to do a purpose, and that purpose is going to happen whether you like it or not. So basically, if you want to change the system, you have to change the structure of the system, or if you want to change the behavior of the system, you have to change the structure of the system. And the other thing is it's like some of my mentees who were new to systems thinking and system dynamics have told me that once they learn about systems, they see everything as a system. It's now a new, basically, it changes their worldview of what they think and how things work. And basically, since everything's a system, now they can think more deeply about all the things they see around them. Even, so for example, nature is an ecosystem, and so there's a lot of parts to it, and they all work together. And so, so everything you see in the world is a system of some kind.
Thank you. Earlier today, we had a lecture by somebody from the African Union. The course we are running is called Global Space Policy. And one of the things he mentioned was around the African Space Agency, which is now designated as an organ of the African Union. So because of the systems thinking, I could connect different things and go back to, from the African agency being an organ, I could trace it back to the structure of the African Union, because that's actually what led to that decision. And then I could see the issues and the gaps along that led to that, and what needs to be done in order to correct that issue. But it's not just about the agency. We have to go to the structure of the organization and tweak some things there before the issues are. And I think I've discussed this with Nelly before. Tweak some things around at the structural end, so that the agency stuff could be corrected, and other things that will come up after that. All right, I think it's been a good discussion. So if there's nothing else, I think we can, maybe, if I may use the word, adjourn. Thank you once again, Dr. Taylor, and hope to engage with you again. I think people can reach out to you via your email, because people are working on different projects or ideas. I know Isesa is working on something, definitely Nelly, and then others will be interested in. Faith also is also working on something. So
Yeah. Well, please connect with me on LinkedIn if you have a LinkedIn account, And maybe even if you're interested, you could subscribe to my YouTube channel, Policy Dynamics. So, and then you would see all my work and get any updates of any new work that I'm doing.
All right, and then I'll send any papers, some maybe early introductory papers into systems thinking, system dynamics. I'll just send to all of us so that if you're interested, you can start from there and then maybe build up from there. All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Have a good evening
have a
from
good evening.
from Florida here, and have a good evening in Africa.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye
Thank
for
you,
now.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, 18, for hosting this. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Bye.